G'day, legends. I hope that you're having a fantastic day, a fantastic hump day, and that your week is going really well. And look, I'm not going to lie. I'm very disappointed and actually a little bit furious of just a complete failure of systems that we put in place and that we fund. And I feel like I'm one of the only commentators who actually is calling out and caring for guys who are on the front line and the war they have to fight. And the reason I care about this is I was in the military at some point, and I'm a 28-year-old man, and a lot of my audience are young males, and the way the world's going, we're probably going to be fighting against each other at some point, and I don't want these systems put in place to protect you, civilians, to just completely fall over as they are. And today, this morning, as I've looked at this, it just has. So what I'm talking about is the OPCW, the Organisation for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons. And they have one job: prohibit chemical weapons used in warfare. Funding of a hell of a lot of money. I'll put it up here. And, well, yeah, let's look over what then they have said. And I've provided evidence on this before. As clear, I feel, as clear as day. Now, if you want to see everything, see me break it down with an international lawyer and a military engineer who worked in the space of CBRN, so threats when there is chemical biological weapons, go and watch this video, the many I've done on this, of these banned weapons. And also, I'll show you some bits of footage that, for me, just go against this whole statement. So, statement on Ukraine from the OPCW spokesperson. Now, statement of Attritional to the spokesperson for the Organisation of Prohibition of Chemical Weapons. Both the Russian Federation and Ukraine have accused one another and reported allegations of use of chemical weapons to the organisation. The information provided to the organisation so far by both sides, together with the information available to the Secretariat, is insufficiently substantiated, what means not enough evidence to support, to adequately prove or justify a claim, argument, or conclusion. Now, I disagree with that vehemently. This top footage here, posted by a Russian page, saying the use of a K-51. This is a K-51 riot control grenade. This footage here, posted by Ukraine's 10 Mountain Brigade, dropping a K-51 riot control agent on the soldiers here. This is clear as day. Now, of course, the CWC, the Chemical Weapons Convention, what is to be enforced by these people, was signed by both nations who are in the war in 93, ratified by Russia in 97, ratified by Ukraine in 98. Now, some people think I blow this out of the water. I don't care. I think the laws of war and the chemical weapons is something that we need to hold absolutely to account, regardless of its bloody, if it's a nation doing it or me squatting on a K-51. Doesn't matter. Now, I've put in here, if it was just Russia, I bet there would be enough evidence. I just am not convinced that these organizations funded through countries in the UN don't have arms in things and are seeing and are being pulled around by the way that politics is going and pushback as well. And look at the ICC. That's a perfect example of this. But this includes the diversion of dual-use toxic chemicals produced worldwide by the chemical industry. Additionally, under the convention, state parties have the obligation to declare all toxic chemical agents they hold for riot control purposes. It is against the convention to use riot control agents at war on the battlefield. Now, those will say to me, oh, you're overdoing it, it's just riot control. I do not trust what is in that grenade. I don't trust what is in a K-51 is a riot agent. I'm not saying it is not, but we cannot prove what is or is not within that. Maybe it's riot control, maybe it's something far, far more sinister. Either way, doesn't matter. If used as a method of warfare, these agents are considered chemical weapons and hence are prohibited under the convention. These are being used. We know they're being dropped into areas. It goes out, the guys run out, then you hit them with something lethal. Typically, this sort of gas is not lethal. Now, this continues on here. Article 2, Paragraph 7 of the Convention, riot control agent is defined as any chemical not listed in the schedule. On May the 1st, the United States of America announced that it had imposed new measures on the Russian Federation for its full-scale war and use of chemical weapons against Ukraine. including for use of chlorpicrin, which is the active ingredient in riot control agents, therefore K51. So the US obviously is saying that it meets then this definition here. So why isn't this? Anyway, in the meantime, the OPCW will continue to provide support to Ukraine, should be supplying support regardless of who asks for it. I don't care if the Taliban ask for support of use of chemical weapons, it should be there. Upon its request, the field of assistance and protection against chemical weapons under Article X of the Convention. In 193 OPCW member states, thus including Russian Federation and Ukraine, have committed to never develop, produce, acquire, stockpile, transfer use of chemical weapons. Now, you can have these agents because it is primarily used in policing. State parties to the CWC have declared that any use of chemical weapons is totally unacceptable and would violate the legal norms and standards of the international community. Well, I'm sorry, OPCW, but the $70+ million a year you get, what are you doing with that if you're not looking at the largest operation war we're having at the moment and calling this out? I've been doing it and no one bloody funds me. This is bullshit. That regardless of, I guess, the bias of people that sit within your board or the funding from the UN, doesn't matter. You need to call a spade a spade. I'm sorry, it makes me furious that we don't hold ourselves to account or anyone else to account, and we have no way of actually implementing any of this, and this is a slippery slope, and this will lead to just complete... Why would other countries then follow this if we are not willing to do it or put it on anyway? If we don't have the jurisdiction, then it's just not going to be useless. So what we're going to talk about today, we're going to look at the maps. We're going to look at statement from special forces as well. We're going to talk about drones. We need to talk about an attempted assassination on Zelensky. We need to look at what Putin has said in his inauguration as well. So let's talk about what the SBU has released about this claimed assassination on Zelensky. So I have this translated into English here. Now, this was done by AI. It's only 30 seconds long, but the whole video is about 12 minutes. So excuse the maybe weird sounding bloody speaker as well as the really bad quality video. That's my bad.
The SBU exposed a network of FSB agents who were preparing the assassination of the president of Ukraine. 2 UDO colonels were detained. Counterintelligence and SBU investigators thwarted the FSB's plans to eliminate the president of Ukraine and other representatives of the country's top military and political leadership. The plans had to be implemented by an agent network, which was abducted in advance by the Security Service of Ukraine with the assistance of the leadership of the State Security Department.
So one thing we do know is there is foreign agents working across the country and counter espionage as well. Now, let's have a read of this and I'll talk about what I see in this. Assassination of Zelensky and other high-ranking officials. 2 colonels of Ukraine's state administration, the UDO, accused of leaking classified information to Russia, were reportedly detained. These are incredibly high rank. I know on Call of Duty you might get a kill streak and become a colonel. Colonels are very, very high. This is very concerning. FSB network aim to find perpetrators among the military close to Zelensky who could take the lead of a state hostage and then kill him. So take Zelensky and then kill him. The terrorist attack, which was supposed to be a gift to Putin for his inauguration, was actually a failure of the Russian Secret Service. So you can classify then that as a win for Ukraine if you see them going about the whole operation psychology here. But other Russian targets reportedly include Melyuk and the GUR head Kirilo Budanov. Now, this is my opinion on it. Killing Zelensky makes no sense. It would backfire horribly for Russia. And I believe if Russia actually wanted to take out Zelensky, then they have had the opportunities. They have published this footage in Odessa of Zelensky's convoy here. And we do know when Zelensky went to a naval special forces base in Odessa to give awards to those sailors who took down a Russian ship, within a minute or 2 of him leaving, then there was an Iskander strike there, killing some of those special forces sailors as well. So I think the opportunities are there. Why does this make no sense? Well, Zelensky, regardless of his popularity within Ukraine, he is incredibly popular with the leaders in the Western world and with many people in the Western world. He would be martyred And even those that don't like him would rally support for the Ukrainian cause instantly. I think it would be the worst move that Russia could make. That's why I just don't see this being legitimate. But maybe, I don't know, I'm just saying this. But what Russia doesn't want to do in this war is they don't want to make any moves that increases support for Zelensky, who of course we know has much support from every Western leader. And then therefore they don't want to increase support to Ukraine. So I can't see it being I could see it being not beneficial taking out Zelensky at all. Just like I would believe that assassinating Putin would be a horrible move for Ukraine and the West. We don't know who would come in, and we don't know their policies and support then rallying all around that as well. As this war continues, it is inevitably going to get worse and worse for one side. We know at the moment there's not going to be a negotiation peace deal signed, so the war has to continue, and at some point, some side is going to start losing more and more, and of course that's the slippery slope, and it will speed up exponentially worse as it goes. Now, what I believe this will lead to, and this is a fear of mine, is it will lead to a number of false flag events. We've seen multiple false flag events carried out already, some gaining more success and rallying support than others. But I do believe the ferocity and fallout from future events will be far more than what we have seen so far. And I believe either way the border moves, either way the war goes in the future, we're going to see that. And I do get concerned about how that then looks. Now, I want to talk about Chasiv Yar and some information that I was sent across as well. So Kiev Independent did a piece on this, but this was posted to Kraken's YouTube video if you'd like to go and watch it. But Ukraine's Kraken Special Forces Unit released a video from the embattled Chasiv Yar, so just out of Bakhmut, on May 7th, showing ongoing fighting, devastated landscape, but claiming there is currently not a single Russian soldier in the town itself. In a post accompanying the video of Kraken, a unit of Ukraine military intelligence, GUR, writes, fighters heroically hold defense, daily destroy numerous enemies, and set fire to enemy armoured vehicles and take prisoners. The enemy is trying to advance from different directions, but thanks to the coordinated work of the unit, there is currently not a single occupier in the city. Now, why I've put special forces here is what one of my dear friends has told me, incredibly knowledgeable, also, yeah, very, very good guy. But talking about this, and this was from a few weeks ago about the same exact area, and you probably have seen this video if you watch a lot of mine, but it's the same thing time and time again. Ukrainian command, when up against the wall, will use their country's senior special forces to conduct the role of line infantry in the hopes it'll make a change. It never does, as it's not their role. From Severodonetsk to Lysychansk and Bakhmut, what should only be used at the strategic level, stuck in a trench, their top snipers are wrongly utilised and unable to act as snipers at times with a 50-metre field of view, utterly wasted time after time. They aren't learning from their mistakes, but making the same ones over and over. It's unforgivable, and the boys are completely aware of this, and it's shameful. Not to forget the fact that over a year of training to be in GUR, SBU Alpha, these people can't be replaced at the drop of a hat. So this was talking about Chasiv Yar, as you can see my message here, and there was a continuation of this. But talking then about these small teams, but this is on the Russian side of what his experience is. VDV, so paratroopers, are led by Spetsnaz, special forces. They're in small teams, utilising hit-and-run tactics along their joint fires capability, and it's working well. And they're gaining ground fast. Small, hard, fast teams in and out. Something that Ukrainians should be doing, and that's what I would do. The Russians are constantly learning and amending their tactics. The Ukrainian command needs a punch in the head for years of lazy incompetence. And this is what I drew to here of the special forces, as my friend said a few weeks ago, conducting the role of line infantry in those areas. So that take that with your will, but that's what I put 2 and 2 together. Now, someone made a very important comment on my video, and I'm sorry I can't remember who made it and I can't find it again. But to the words, it said to the words of the effect of, Willie, you failed to explain that once you start losing an attritional war, it is incredibly difficult then to turn the tide. And I didn't touch on this on that video, but I've touched on similar with manpower problems. Now, the analogy that I would give is if you've got a bucket with a hole in the bottom of it, of course, leaking water, and the bucket is full, and you have a cup to fill that bucket, to keep it full may be easy, But if you go away for an amount of time and the bucket comes down to the bottom and you're trying to fill it back up, then you have to work twice as hard to get it back up. To maintain is much harder than to then increase. And we saw Russia have this exact problem. Russia had to fall back on Wagner PMC and, of course, the use of conscript soldiers from prisoners in here and take basically a year or more of any offensive actions to recover from the manpower losses they had in the beginning of the 2022 war on Ukraine. Now, with manpower issues, does Ukraine have a fallback like that they can actually then use to try and correct and fill this? And if we're stepping into an attritional war, manpower issues aren't going to be fixed for months or years. Some would say a year and a half, 2 years that it takes. Things are not going to escalate incredibly well. And we need to talk a bit about this. I promise we'll have a look at the maps after this. So Ukraine's defense minister, Rustem Umerov, put up this, but I'm not actually interested in this. I'm more interested about what the Ukrainian people beneath this are seeing. Today, the cabinet minister supported the draft decree of the president of Ukraine, drafted by the Ministry of Defense, together with the general staff, on the creation of a separate kind of troops in the armed forces, the forces of unmanned systems. So, you've got the Army, Navy, Air Force, unmanned systems. Now, I'm not sure exactly how this breakup will work, whether it will be a separate service or a core. Regardless, this is something that we'll see. We see America with like Space Force, Australia with cyber. So just growing of what warfare will become. Strategic step for our country in terms of growing threat from Russia, unmanned systems, modern and necessary solutions. So we're talking about drones, drone boats, all of this. But this is what, and I've hidden some names here, but this is what some people are saying. And I've gone through all these accounts, looked back through tagged photos, whatever, to make sure they're not bots as best that I can. But you can see these are all translated across as well, so some things may be wrong. But to Umrov, if you take, and these are the top comments on these, but this was a pretty recent post, so not too much action. But anyway, if you take such a long time to pass the necessary laws and resolutions of the defense forces, there is no one to fight. When will you set up service lines? When will you fulfill the promises to the defenders and deal the enforcement of social guarantees for the military and their families? So this demobilization, rotation. When will you finally create the conditions to effectively start the recruiting system of a set of this, which means motivated people to the defense forces? This is the problem Ukraine's going to have. Their voluntary force is struggling. So it means the motivated people here have already volunteered and are either on the front line or have been 200 or 300, so killed or wounded. So then you're going to be getting conscripts, what is going to take a long time, are not going to have the level of experience and may not be motivated. Now, they are the same, exhausted, this word, which means dismayed, will not keep the front. When will it get to your corrupt mind? Stealing will not have anyone because the country will not stay. Do you understand this? Now, people are saying, why is it taking so long? These are all different people. The decision to create was back in February. Something takes a very long reaction time. So this was made back then and now. And I cannot believe that Ukraine still hasn't released exactly how many people it's actually going to mobilize from what was signed by the president now weeks ago. I can't believe there's a delay on this. This other one says it's been 2 months since the decision was made. And what the fuck is a separate law about this? For what? Anyway, we'll continue on with some other bits and pieces here. Are you hoping this will improve the mobilisation situation? I doubt that anyone will decide to go for the army for a lifetime. Need clear terms of service, what you're going to hear a lot. 1 day, 2 days, zero on the zero line, 1 day equals 3 days. So time off if you're on the zero line for an amount of days. Neither whip or gingerbread will drag anyone to the army if it's a one-way ticket. This is what people are saying. If there's no rotation, guaranteed, no demobilisation, your only ways to come off is to be killed and or wounded. Therefore, people don't want to volunteer to go and fight. And we know that many, many men are trying to either escape the country or hiding or refusing to go back if they've managed to get out. Did you make the terms of service for people to go there? Nobody wants to go and serve until they can go heavy or 300 on the shield. So meaning they can only go home if you're killed or wounded, 200, 300. Clear and realistic terms of service are needed not only by active military, but also those who join the military. Again, appropriate service terms. Everyone needs clear service. This is what people are demanding. Now, As well, I found many, many Ukrainians on the president's website then signing this petition. Now, they've got 22,000 of the 25,000 votes required, establishing the term of service for military personnel during martial law and the right to release by recalculating this term according to the proposed coefficients, taking into account the place of service. Now, there's a lot of people on my channel saying 2,200 off to look after these guys in the front line. Mr. President, we're contacting you in order to resolve an urgent issue. Undefined final terms of service and lack of reason for dismissal under established terms of service is a violation of Article 24, Part 2 of Article 64 of the Constitution of Ukraine, as well as general principle of justice and equality of all before the law. A lot of people have been pointing out the Constitution and what's happening here. Even under martial law, citizens are equal in rights, and their accordance with paragraph 2, Article 64, have the right to know for what period of their rights may be limited. We ask you to take into account that uncertainty of terms of service is already the cause of insufficient amount of human capital in military formations, manpower shortage, mass abstention from the territorial recruitment, so not going, and social support centres, and is also a consequence of the voluntary abandonment part of military personnel. As a result, delay in making decisions on the establishment of terms of service, most military personnel feel injustice of authorities towards them, and this demotivates conscripted men to come to the TCC and SP to register. So these recruitment officers up here. So what they're looking for is gradual release of military personnel to integrate and adapt to positions in the rear, so you move back and forward, that there is rotation. Therefore, they're saying this will reduce corruption risks of occupying such back offices due to regular rotation. So you don't have someone sitting in one spot forever, then you could have corruption. In this, the proposal for calculating the term of service, taking into account the place of military service, a military serviceman receives the right to discharge after 36 months of continuous service. And this is what everyone is talking about. Continuous service, 36 months, 3 years, that then you can be released off that. We know that was specifically left out of the mobilization bills. And this is some of the demands for one day being on the contact line, and rotation and treatment there, as well as rights for injuries. Now, this continues on a little bit, is the President of Ukraine is the guarantor of compliance with the Constitution of Ukraine, the rights of freedom for man and citizen. You, the President, undertook in your numerous public appeals to ensure fair treatment of your defenders. Therefore, we demand to keep the corresponding promises and obligations. Our servicemen, who without hesitation and without waiting for summons, were the first to defend the country, took care of every person, every citizen, who now live a full civilian life. Thanks to them, the people and authorities of Ukraine had the time and opportunity to prepare for a long struggle of independence. Because of these people signing up to fight without waiting for summons, Ukraine was able to fend off that initial wave of Russian attacks. They gave their health, their time, and their lives for this country. Again, establishing terms for 36 months that they're saying this will reduce the demoralisation of our servicemen who feel injustice, uncertainty and chronic fatigue, and will contribute to the mobilisation of the population. Why would you volunteer if you know the only way to come off is to be badly wounded or then killed? This is what they are saying. Anyway, we have this coming out, and this is, if you've seen any of the videos of young men being mobilised, or not even young men, just men being mobilised, you can see that it can be a horrible affair. Anyway, a man of draft age died on the territory of the military enlistment officers of the Kryvyi Rih on May 5th due to rapid deterioration of health. Saying, this is from Kiev Independent, there have been multiple cases of suspected abuses committed by enlistment officials towards civilians and conscripts since Ukraine started a large-scale mobilization after the Russian invasion. 49-year-old man reportedly died at a military enlistment center in Ternopil in February after staying at the center for multiple days. He was reported to be found epileptic, but had bruises all over his body. Now, epileptic here we see then in the police that released this then today recruitment office of the May 5th one, that he was from a deterioration of health, signs of epileptic attack. We'll talk about more of that in a second. But commander of the security department in Ternopil was charged with torture last October, and another staff member of the same department was charged with illegal imprisonment of a civilian. Now, under the comments in this, many people, again, looking through where they're from, making sure they're not bots, are saying this was very, very similar as well. Sharp deterioration of health of servicemen was accompanied by signs of epileptic attack. Emergency medical care was immediately called, before the arrival of which military service was provided with domestic care. Police officers who arrived at the call found a biological death with no signs of physical impact. Now, what most people are pointing at beneath this is, one, what some of the family is saying, but secondly, why are police officers doing the pathology death reports on this? Again, all of this has horrible, horrible effects down the line for the morale, mobilization, manpower issues, and like my follower friend said to me on here on the comment, once you've got these issues, to correct that is incredibly, incredibly difficult. Why do I care? Why do I get worked up with this? Because I feel like I'm the only one who gives a shit about the young guys going into a bloody war. Sorry. We'll look at the maps in a second. Now, of course, yesterday, Putin had his inauguration because he went through the election and he's president again. Now, this is some of what he said. We'll look at a few things in here. We have been and will continue to be open to strengthening good relations with all countries that view Russia as a reliable and honest partner. Indeed, those constitute the global majority. If you're talking population figures, he's correct. Now, we are not rejecting dialogue with Western states. The choice is theirs, whether they intend to continue trying to contain Russia's development, continue the policy of aggression, the relentless pressure they have been exerting on our country for years, or seek a path to cooperation and peace. To reiterate, we are open to talks, including on security and strategic ability, but not to negotiations from a position of strength. We are open to a conversation without arrogance, conceit, or exceptionalism. A dialogue on an equal footing and with respect for each other's interests. This right here, negotiations from a position of strength, this is why the 10-point peace plan will not work, because the opening point number 5 and 6, I believe, of Ukraine Zelensky's peace plan is territorial integrity, return of that Russia off the land. To have that, you need to win the war and push Russia back, or have some sort of event where Russia then has to withdraw, which I think that was what the West was relying on. I think the West was more reliant on a Russian collapse, withdrawal, more so than a tactical military Ukrainian victory. And as we have seen, the sanctions and this and that and the ability for the Russian military to learn has far exceeded what the West thought, therefore stuck in that problem. But if you're coming at this is the baseline for negotiations is a full withdrawal and return of the land, well, that can't start anywhere. Now, I'm not saying that that is right or wrong, but I'm saying there's no point in peace deals if what each other are looking for is so far away and so unrealistic at the moment. Why would Russia agree to that with the changing situation on the ground while they hold multiple areas, including Crimea, Donetsk, with not much threat at the moment of that being recaptured? It needs to be realistic if there's going to be peace talks. Now, a dialogue on equal footing with respect to each other's interests. Russia does have legitimate security concerns. Now, it doesn't mean that there's going to be invasion. But if a country, whether you agree with their concern or not, has a security concern, you still need to take that into account of, okay, what is being said here. Just like many people have said, if Russia was to take Ukraine, say the whole thing, NATO then would be incredibly unhappy with Russia then on their border in Poland and Hungary. Do you get what I'm meaning? So you have to still take into account how the other side have in a war. Whether you say it's legitimate or not, you can't just throw it in the bin and go, it doesn't matter, because we know we're the good guys, but both ways. Together with our partners in Eurasian integration and the sovereign development of development centres, we will continue to build a multipolar world and equal and indivisible security system. In this complex, rapidly changing world, we must strive to be self-sufficient and competitive, opening up new horizons for Russia, as well as have done many times throughout history. But we must also remember its lessons and never forget about the enormous price we paid for internal unrest and troubles. Of price paid through the 20th century, no country suffered as much as the people within the Soviet Union and Russia. The price paid was unbelievable. The price that Second World War cost, as well as communism internal dispute, cost as well. Unbelievable. Then we can't just forget that because people want to and don't agree with seeing it. Anyway, let's have a look at the maps. Now, one thing I will say, and I've spoiled your day, is then the deep state map has not updated. We don't have any update on this I'll look at it again before this goes public, and I'll chop in here if not. But we'll still talk about some areas, as Syriac does. Here we have Ukraine, the centre, the capital of Kyiv. Red areas occupied since 22, the purple since 2014. Now, let's come down in Zap Oblast, south of Kyiv, the area which I have no idea where the front line is actually sitting in here, but in this Robotny front. Now, Syriac here is saying Russian army made new advances inside Robotny. 6% of the locality was retaken by Russian forces. Now, what we can line up is, let's have a look. See where this road curves out. So here, so it's saying that the Russian forces are pretty much out to the grey zone here in this front. Again, a lot of difference here depending on what it actually is, but the maps just are not then lining up. Now let's have a look up a little bit further. We'll have this Bilharivka front. Now we haven't seen really any shift in here, but it does have a map correction by Syriac. So map corrections were made. Oh, sorry, wrong one. Right here. So just up in here, we look at where then this waterway curves around. So just on this front here, which is shown as grey zone, then on this map, then we'll come up into the north. We'll look for Tabayevka, Kislivka, and then in this front here near Kuzmivka, we have this update here. Map corrections were made due to then geolocated footage here. So where we're looking is just down here, what is shown as grey zone on this map, but Syriac is actually saying this should be green due to the footage of artillery striking infantry soldiers there. And I went and had a look through the footage. Now, why have we seen not that much movement? Well, I think this could be actually due to the celebration of Victory Day tomorrow for Russia on the 9th of May. So they don't want to wage anything new that could then fail, as well as over Easter, we didn't see much movement from Ukraine or Russia as well. But after, we may see a large increase. If we see an increase, because one thing I will say with this massive offensive that everyone's building up for Russia, the people building up this offensive the most is Ukrainian bloggers, Ukrainian officials, and Western intel like the ISW. Could it be that there is no massive offensive coming? Russia just want to chip away, which the strategy of attritional warfare would say to do. But then if there isn't by June, July, a massive offensive, then there can be a political via a PR win saying we managed to defeat the Russian massive offensive that never then came. Could that then happen? You need to look, I guess, way outside the box on all of this. Legends, you can probably see that I'm a little bit pissed about some things because I hate when our own systems, which we put faith in, just don't uphold shit. And yeah, don't bullshit a bullshitter. Anyway, legends, I hope that you have a fantastic day. Look after yourselves, and I really appreciate you guys being here. I'll speak to you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.